Well, hey, Chris, welcome to the show. You are a living legend of the sport, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. I like what you're doing, and I appreciate you being included. With esteemed company.
Since I've started this show, you have been on my list, so it's finally glad to get you on here.
Well, yeah, you keep, like I said, you keep good company. Verity and Christos, they're great people, and I admire their work ethic, and it's easy to watch from afar and know they're going to have success no matter where they go.
Absolutely. Well, so just recently, you and Linda had the opportunity to watch Ryan in his first TV appearance as a member, PBA member, and I was curious from your perspective as a father, what were those emotions like as compared to your first appearance on TV?
Oddly enough, way less nervous for him than I was for me.
Okay.
We do have the benefit of he made a show a year ago, and for that one I was incredibly nervous.
Okay.
You just don't know. Is he ever going to make another one? You know, the first one everybody kind of remembers. I don't know if everyone else does, but you certainly, yourself, you remember the first one.
Right.
and you want great things for your kids. And now after being out here 4 weeks with him, seeing, you don't know how he's going to adapt and all that. It hasn't been the struggle that I thought he. And so they're probably coming, but he's made it look a little bit easy, certainly easier than I thought he would. And so I was fairly confident that things, I just felt good for him that he'd gotten to that step, and he's make a show, and it just feels like it's a small step, but there's going to be more. And so, and it's easy after 25 years to look back and go, okay, well, this is just an experience where he can learn and move on to the next one. And maybe something great happens today, but he's in the fifth seed. He's kind of on house money. And,
Sure.
if you get a little momentum, who knows? But either way, this is just a start. And, it didn't go well. And some of that's on myself and Rob Gottschall. At this point, he sees the lane really well, but because he was nervous, he wasn't as sure of himself in that environment as he's already become in qualifying in some of the other parts. And so he got talked into staying a little further right than I think he really wanted to. Dom was on the same plan. And so, it wasn't like it was a crazy decision, but it blew up on both of them. And then the experience factor just won out from there. Dom made the moves faster, got to the right place. Ryan was slower on the first move, then made a bad, made the wrong choice and in one game you only get one,
Sure.
really, and it has to be perfect if the other guy's willing to be good at all, and
Right.
And it wasn't, and so the end, whether it was 180 or 140 didn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Yeah.
wins and losses is how I look at it, and I'd rather take the big swing at a chance to win, and
Sure.
the end score is bad. It just doesn't matter, and so he'll learn from it, and it's really just a strategic thing. And I don't think he'll make the same mistake again because nobody likes to have that game. I had my first game on TV was I led the tournament, shot 160.
Yeah.
Linda's first TV show, she shot, I think she said 150 or whatever it was, 140.
So he's in good company.
Yeah, I mean, there's really only two ways those things go. You come out and his very first show, he has the front eight. I mean, that doesn't really happen. That's the 10%er. And the rest of them are pretty much like that. You get off to a little shaky start. The room is spinning pretty fast. You're having a hard time getting it to slow down. And all of a sudden you're in the sixth frame and you're 40 down. I mean, it just happens. And it happens all the time. It can happen 20 shows in too. But that first one, the first few will go by pretty fast. And so it's unfortunate, but I think he'll learn from it and it'll be all right.
How did you manage the nerves, or how do you manage the nerves in those big situations?
You rely on previous experience. That's the easiest way. The hardest part is to be confident when you haven't walked through that environment yet. And I think, that's an eternal struggle that all of us walk through. Verity can speak to this, I'm sure, as well. And it's, you want to be confident, but there's a really fine line between being accountable, which allows you to keep getting better and address your mistakes and really improve at a fast rate, while also still staying confident. Because if you're self accountable and beating yourself up,
Mm.
then you don't ever feel super comfortable, and you're not in that state of, I'm, some guys just have that I'm the king of the world. I call it unearned confidence. And to some extent, I'm really jealous of it in certain environments. But those people also tend to have, you'd say, holes in their swing, things that they're not great at, and they don't really ever address them because of that. Because that confidence
Mm.
doesn't really make them feel like they ever have to get better at those things. And where that line is, I obviously I feel like I'm more similar to Verity in that we just keep working and addressed any small imperfection that we're trying to get better at, and that sometimes the flip side of that is you're not as confident in some of those situations as you'd like to be. Um, but we keep getting better all the time, and the work in progress is the end goal of being the pursuit of excellence, I guess is what I would call it.
What would you say to someone who uh, is newer to the sport? They're trying to get better, they're practicing, but they haven't really had any success yet to fall back on. How do you gain that confidence before having success?
I think you rely on the fact that you've put in the work, and the confidence is in the fact that this isn't going to be lightning strikes and somehow the stars and moon align. It's that you've outworked the other people. You've done the drills. You can count on the fact that your base fundamentals are. I don't have to overmanage those, uh, just because it's an important moment, because I've put in the thousands and thousands and 10,000s of reps. And so I know that's going to hold up. I can just focus on hitting it. I tend to think of one, I have to think of one thing. The whole being in the zone thing doesn't work for me because my mind's too busy. And so it doesn't really turn off. So I have to keep it occupied with one pretty specific goal oriented task, whether it's a physical game task. For me, a lot of times I'll focus on my start and make sure that start gets good, and then shift it to, I got to hit a target, whatever my end goal is from there.
Are you a big fan of the psychology that your subconscious can do once you've trained your subconscious? It can do many tasks at once, where your conscious mind can only think of one thing at a time. So it's better to, in those situations, try to occupy your conscious mind with a song you're humming in your head, just so that your subconscious can then just do the task.
Uh, I was slower to this than probably some other people were. We did a lot of things at Wichita State with visualization and some training mental techniques, but uh, I didn't have great language for it at the time, so I tried a lot of different things myself, and I was a different brain type than some of the other guys that I was playing with, and so the whole, there's a lot about getting free and I've had times where I have a song in my head, uh, and it can kind of, like you say, occupy the conscious space, and it lets everything else free up.
Hmm.
And certainly, I would advise it. I do it a different way now most of the time, with I occupy it with one swing thought that keeps me kind of feeling like it's goal oriented and doing what it really
Okay.
wants to do, while at the same time you're freeing up to go, okay, now we can be free and loose and do all those things all those, you know, hundreds and hundreds of shots a week that we put in. Now get out of the way. You watch Norm Duke, and he'll say all the time of, just get out of the way and let the 50 years of excellence that he had perform.
Yeah.
And I think, uh, I think there's a lot to that. If we can get out of our own conscious space, like you're talking about, that you perform better in the,
Sure.
if you can rely on that experience and that time that you put in.
That's a big thing that I struggle with is getting out of the way, because I'm a bit of a I have perfectionistic tendencies, which help me in other areas of my life, but
Yeah.
in bowling it seems to hurt me quite a bit. And so it's finding a way to trust myself, I guess, that I have practiced and done the work,
Yeah.
and then let my body do its thing.
Yeah. Like I said, I think it's a fine line, and not too many people really find the right balance. I think you struggle. I think the balance can move on you as you go too.
Mm.
But in general, I think it makes you better overall, especially if you can flip that switch a little bit in these really high intensity moments. And if you can find a way to turn that off and then just rely on those and kind of be free flowing. Uh, Ryan's very interesting to me in that way because he has a lot of the same brain types. We take a lot of notes. He's taken what I do, grabbed onto it, and it's there. He knows I do it. I don't make him because I tell him why I do it. And some of them he's chose, quite a bit of it he's chose to do and then does his own version of it, and it's already serving him. But when he gets to a place where he's pretty comfortable or feels like he has really good bar reaction, he has the ability to really turn it off and not overcook the minutia,
Right.
and just go throw these monster 20 baggers, 25 baggers in league, and not worry about trying to hit 12. He's just going to get it. And then he does because he's not trying,
Yeah.
because of all the time he's put in, but he's not overcooking the whole process. And so it really frees him up and puts some monster runs together. And, that I'm jealous of. At 22, that he's got some of that figured out. I'm like, man, would that have been nice? I guess there's a bonus to having a psychology major as a mom.
Well, sure.
And if you actually listen to her,
right.
Yeah, there's also that.
Listen to your parents, kids.
Well, yeah. You can hear them. Take the good parts.
Sure.
We talk about better version a lot.
Is it true that Ryan didn't bowl from age 12 to age 18?
Yeah.
So
maybe 3 times a year.
Okay. So what would you say to, because a lot of the greats you hear, they started bowling when they were 5 and they still bowl today. And so you get that picture in your head. Well, I started when I was 18 so I'm never going to be that good. What would you say to a parent or a teenager who has dreams of going to college, bowling collegiately, maybe want to go to the pros one day, but they started late? What advice would you give them?
Well, coaching is the key to a lot of that. And as Stu he says a lot of things, but some things are actually pretty, aside from humor, some of them are pretty wise. And we took advantage of our unfair advantages. So, we had a solid knowledge base that we could help get the start of his journey moving a little quicker. And I thought I knew quite a bit about two-handed, but I had never taught anybody from the ground up like that. And he's athletic with body awareness, that's a coach's dream because, well, hey, do this. And they go, oh, yeah.
That's helpful.
And they can do that. And that makes it way easier to go through the process. But, I had Mark Baker to lean on. When we went through different challenges, we called Chris Vai and Kyle Troop and Simonson and even Belmonte. And these guys gave him invaluable information that they acquired over years and years that we were able to get in a couple of minutes over the phone with pitches. And okay, well, I tried to do this and that got my track off the finger holes. And so really long answer to a fairly simple question, but the thing, you have to get around people, and I think it does take a village, but you have to put in the games because you have a lot of catching up to do from repetitions. And then it has to be directed though. It can't just be throwing balls down the lane. Like most of the shots we throw from 5 to 11 or 12, before you hit your adult body, we're really just throwing shots and having fun. There's a little bit of timing and footwork, but until you go from being, 4'7" to whatever height you're going to get to, the ball is basically bigger, either wider than you or a significant portion of your overall body weight. And so I don't know, the unpopular opinion, I don't know how much you have to bowl before you're 11 or 12. But if you want to be good, once you get to that age, I think a lot of work from 13 on, it certainly would have served him better to been a lot more active at 13, 14. But baseball and basketball, and he's playing a fairly high level of youth sports at both of those, and just didn't leave much time. And Bolero had taken over, so there was no youth leagues at the center that we were at, and we bowled 13. I think was the last time. Maybe it was 12. I guess was the last time he bowled an adult youth league.
Okay.
So him and his brother bowled with either Linda or I, and ironically, Hope Cramley was in the same league.
Wow, interesting.
And we didn't really know her. We just knew this athletic girl was over here, and she threw it pretty good. She threw it straight then. Brian O'Keefe did a nice job after that, taking that athleticism and really, and we chatted a little bit, but she was shy and her parents, weren't really looking for outside influence. So just, wow, all right, she's a tall, athletic girl. She could be good at this. She wanted, and obviously she turned out to be really good at it.
You mentioned putting in the games. What is your personal opinion? Is there a point where you can overwork, where you practice so much that you're just, or even in a practice session, when you kind of reach a tipping point where you get tired and your form starts getting worse and you're teaching yourself bad things?
Probably. But the point also is that, you don't have to be able to run sprints to be a great bowler, but you do have to have some endurance. And you're not going to bowl for 8 hours a day like you do sometimes over 2 blocks, in a qualifying session or something like that. So you kind of have to do it a little bit differently. And so I feel like if you can't go and bowl, maybe not on a regular basis, but I mean, 8 or 10 games was just kind of that was a regular day. I don't know. Guys work a lot less now. Now their bodies will probably hold up better to some extent. And certainly I can't do the amount of work I did then. And so at this stage, there is a point where I can bowl too much. My body starts to break down, and then it does diminishing returns, I guess, is how you would call it. Because, back surgery at 14 and a torn labor in my right hip, at some point that gets weak. And then, the reps start getting pretty disgusting.
Sure.
And it gets hard to watch. So, it's time at that point to either rest or put them up for that day and go back at it again. So I do practice shorter time frames these days, but the frequency is still pretty high. But I do believe you need to bowl 6 or 8 games, be able to bowl 6 or 8, because a lot of the bigger tournaments, that's just an average block. If you can't do that in an hour and a half, then you're probably going to struggle to keep up that over a 3 or 4 hour time frame.
You mentioned earlier taking notes. How do you like to take notes? Because I will take notes sometimes on pairs of lanes in league that I bowl, just so I can kind of have a reference. However, a lot of those notes are based on how the lanes change, and the week to week I could be on that same pair of lanes, and that pair may change based on who we're bowling. So how do you take notes?
I was going to show you actually, but I mean, each center basically I go through, and when we bowl in a week, you're going to bowl on every pair basically.
Right. And
so I'll write down where I'm standing on that pair, and then what ball I was throwing, and then the score. And then if there's something that really sticks out, hey, wow, the gutter doesn't hook, so it's likely a topography thing. On lane 16, then I'll write that. I'll make a note of it.
Okay.
But most of the time you go through the first time, just writing it down. And then the second time around, when you come to some of these pairs, you'll go, all right, that right lane was still too tighter. Well, now there's an 80% chance or better that every time you hit lane 16 for the next 6 years, it's going to be tighter. So I don't have to 210 on it the first shot. I don't have to, you can cheat it a little bit. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for little ways to pick up 10 pins, 20 pins. If it's split and you make a move and it's another, it can be 40 in that game, plus the mental things that go along with momentum changes within a block. And then overall, I write down characteristics of the center and just things that you pick up throughout the whole week. Hey, asymmetrical balls maybe didn't look great in this place. Hey, I know it hooks in the front, but shiny, quick balls, that's not the deal. You have to, and you try and so that you shortcut yourself when you go back there in a year, 2 years, 4 years, you go, okay, it's not an absolute, but you go, this is the path. I went from A to B to C. Well, maybe we need to skip B and C and
Okay.
just go A to D first,
You might pick up 10 or
and then
20
if that doesn't
pins.
work, then you go back to a normal rotation of adjustments, and you're just trying to cheat it a little bit, and over time, and uh, we go to certain places. And Lynn, she told the story last week. She went to Germany and bowled at the Senior World Championships, and I still had notes from we had bowled the World Championships there from 7 or 8 years ago, and it goes 80% of the time the same lanes that were, because it's a center that wasn't installed fantastic. So
Hmm.
especially the
Interesting.
first 20, 24 lanes were pretty sketchy lane to lane, and she goes, I had a cheat code. It's
Yeah.
just, and it played out fairly well. And then she was bowling good, and she could take advantage of it. And so she won about everything that week.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's a lot of lane to lane, and and then you look at types of balls, and I'll have a master list of the balls I used, and you kind of look through and go, okay, hey, Zens were really good. Well, no kidding, they're always really good. So
Yeah.
if I could use that every week, if we still had those, that would be great. But when you see the anomalies, hey, I used a lot of small cores. Oh wow,
Okay.
okay,
Hmm.
things that take you longer to get to
Right.
naturally
Save
because
yourself a few
trying to,
frames.
yeah, game frames, games, overall strategies that you can just dial into over the years, and then kind of dial in some centers and get it figured out. Ryan has bowled at Springfield a few times,
Hmm.
bowling Ozarks and some other stuff, and so he had a couple of notes in there of different balls that it had worked well, and it ended up serving him pretty well.
Let's just talk some bowling basics real quick about your game.
Yeah,
What do you target on the lanes?
the arrows.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll and then the more open my angles get, then I'll have a secondary target down lane.
Okay.
Uh, but my game's pretty square, I guess, swing straight and those kind of things. And so anytime I'm playing relatively small angles, that's easy. And when you have the pro lane markers down lane,
Hmm.
obviously I didn't have those when I was a kid. And so it longer to adapt to them. But when they're there, I
That is
use
helpful.
those to, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it really is almost cheating to have
Yeah.
those down there and be able to go around that second tracer
Yeah.
on 85% of what we bowl on.
My home center has those, and so when I go to a tournament somewhere else and they're not there, it takes me a second to be like, all right, where's 10?
Yeah, right. And in the HPLs, you have that little three board stripe that's 9, 10, 11. So you can trace it down there. It's just, you really have to bowl a lot to get a feel for where, hey, this is 43 feet.
Sure.
It's a little trickier.
I was always taught growing up when you make your transition moves to do 2-and-1s and just keep making 2-and-1s until you find it.
Yeah.
But I've had some coaches tell me do 1-and-1s, which obviously that could possibly change your angle to the pocket. Do you use those interchangeably, or there's a time when you use one over the other?
I mean, it's generally, the general rule is half of what you move. When there's a lot of oil in the front, you can make parallel moves like that. Um, like 2-and-2s and those kind of things. But it's because they're a little cliffed and you can move into what's going on environmentally right now. There's not hardly ever a lot of oil in the front lane, especially on the regular tour for me because I'm one of the lower rev rates. So there's always a lot of traffic left to me as well. But surfaces are all older. We're way closer to wood now than we are, fresh synthetic. And even the new synthetics have a lot of texture in them, and they're softer than the old pro lanes and different surfaces on top of that. And so the front generally is just going to hook. So there's not too many 1-and-1s ever at this point.
Mm.
There's way more 1-and-0s,
Okay.
you know. And when I was really on top of my game, I would go ahead and just move half. You know, lots of times I was looking at two board. I'd be looking at two boards and trying to split the one in the middle.
Okay.
My At my very best, 96% of my misses were left. So I was always looking at the furthest right
Mm.
uh, that I could get it to, and know that I had some, you know,
Gotcha.
my swing and game eliminated the right side of the course. So I could just look at 11 and knew that I wouldn't hit 10. I would hit 11, or I'd hit 12, or, a really bad one might hit 13. But uh, that that's kind of what I worked on with straighter footwork. I didn't drift any of that. There wasn't a lot of things to allow me to really get it going.
Okay.
overwrite. I just shut it down and miss left.
If you know you're in the wrong ball, what is your thought process moving forward?
It's what happened. Why did it happen? How do I fix it? And it's largely the same way that I get out of the anger stage, the emotional stage of my whether it's inadequacy or lack of intelligence of making the right decisions, but get out of the emotional state and then go towards solving the problem is diagnosing. Okay, I, by the same token, if I'm using what my normal strategy, which is the strongest ball I can to control the lane, they'll go through the pins, and the ball moves pretty much always go, one down and two. I mean, and by down I mean longer. It's
Sure.
always front to back is how I'm setting up balls, and so uh, you know it's flat tending. It wasn't before. All right, well, I was already using a strong ball, so I don't have to guess whether it's burning up or carrying down. It's burning up, and so now I get to something that's a little bit cleaner, and that will let me. And so I try and dummy proof it myself. Much like technology, I try and save me from myself, and as much of the emotional decision making as I can while I'm on the lanes by doing all that work ahead of time.
How do you know when the ball's too early?
Yeah, I mean that's the hardest thing. We talk about it all the time. Even Ryan, he doesn't see, and it when one of the biggest benefits of rev rate, it's not actually the rev rate; it's the fact that you get to throw it firm
Hmm.
and your ball still hooks, so it doesn't see the front as much.
Hmm.
So when it actually does hook, it doesn't happen as often. It's a little more unique, and it's pretty rare when your rev rate's 525 for it not to hit. You're like,
Sure.
what's going on with that?
Right.
Is it burning up or is it down lane? And so, uh, I mean, the real cheat code is you just have somebody take a video and you can watch. But uh, most of the time, it's from progressions. The only time that a lane's actually going to get slicker down lane is when there's a lot of urethane being used at the same time. And at that point, yes, it could be getting tighter down lane, but that oil is coming from somewhere, and almost certainly it's coming from the front. So it is a combination of basically the lane's getting flatter,
Hmm.
and so your
And
ball
longer, I
is
guess, to some
burning up.
extent, if you got a
Yeah,
lot of urethane.
it's burning up to some extent, and then getting on top of the oil down lane. Uh, in both cases, it's almost the same thing. It's just how much can you push the ball through the front? You know.
Okay. Because, see, I've always been told that when there's a lot of carry down, obviously you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to use a clean ball, something like a tension star, let's say,
Yeah.
because it needs friction. So
Mm-hmm.
if the heads are going away, but there's carry down, and a tension star is probably not a good choice because it's going to want to hook early in the friction, or at least maybe try to get through the friction, but then it's going to get down lane, see oil, and just push. So then
Right.
I've always been told go to a bigger ball, but a bigger ball is going to want to read earlier in the heads. So then it's
Mm-hmm.
like, are you trying to loft it over the heads to get it down lane and then let it hook through the carry down?
Yeah. What you've been told, I think, is the common. It works 80% of the time at least,
Okay.
but it does require you to do some things to get it to save energy through that front. Maybe bigger angles is all it is. Maybe you have to open it up and use that early hook and use it. Ironically, in the last few years, for as much as Sean Rash hates urethane, he's done really well using really weak balls and getting to the right of it and using it as hold. And that's the other option. But you have to have the same thing. You have to have a skill set that lets you get through that front that really hooks and then use it as hold. Where you get in trouble with the shiny balls is trying to make it hook through that carry down. And if you're trying to, he's just using it as hold, so he's outside of it the whole time. And so then it does see all of that, and it actually makes that little bit of carry down look like a lot of hold, versus if he moved five left and went at it, he would just 210, you know, relentlessly. But he has a skill set where he can really stay up the back and do that. Most of us would just take a bigger ball and then maybe add some rotation, maybe add some loft. You know, on the senior tour, you just kind of picture whatever JJ would do. Uh, that's normally a pretty good plan. And because he's got all the tools and kind of whatever he's doing, all right, well, let's just do that. That must be working pretty good.
What do you typically use your fill frame for?
Next option.
Okay. Was that typically if you want to see if you can move further left, or I guess balling down?
Yeah, whatever I think the next ball is, almost always.
Okay.
Sometimes it's the same ball, and hey, I need to move his own left, which I see way more of now. And when I used to be in the middle higher rev area of rev rate, or when I'm on the senior tour, okay, let's just move his zone left. So I might move 3, 4, 5 left, and make sure that there is more push there. And now, and as I practice with Ryan a lot more, that 3 board move is more like 8, because I've moved into now where he's at, which now means I have to move again, and so it becomes a much bigger move, and then you get a look of it really is moving on into something almost new.
So
So
you don't just ball down and roll the same line to see if it'll hold there. You're probably going to go and make a big jump.
yeah, I mean the eternal chase at the high level of play is just getting to the left edge of the oil line. If oil's left and hook is right, you're a way better bowler than if you have it the other way around. And so and that's why the best players have been, relatively speaking, power players in the last 25 years.
Hmm.
Walter maybe, but when the front hooks that much, being straight is almost impossible to do. And I don't know that today's player sees any way that Walter Ray could be the best player right now.
Hmm.
And I witnessed it. I mean, it's crazy, but
Yeah.
because the perfect combination, perfect storm of technology, lane surfaces, balls, oils,
Sure.
it. Even the straight guys get pushed left, and then once they start giving away that energy in the front of the lane where they don't want to, they really everybody's kind of playing the same game at that point, and you know the more powerful, like in every sport, the more powerful just tend to have it's not you something you can't overcome completely,
Right.
but you're going to have to play at an exceptional level.
Moving forward in the pros, you think you have to have 450, 500 plus revs to be competitive?
I think, or a specialized tool.
Okay.
I mean, a guy like Andrew Anderson's right around the same as me at that 400, 420 range, but he has an exceptional skill set, which allows him to compete in a lot of different things. Chris Prather has some real skills with axis rotation, which allows him to eliminate the trouble portion of the lane, the first 20 feet, much like Pete did forever. And I think you have to have that tool.
Okay.
Mika could come back now and actually might have a better run right now than he had even when he was perennially a top 10 guy every year. His loft and the ability to loft on a line, not up. I mean, that's a regular tool now. We're back to basically surfaces that were wood, like when Westlake and Ferraro and guys like that were real forces on different weeks, different years on the PBA Tour, and so even the highest rev rate guys are using loft on a pretty regular basis to battle the front.
If you're like me, you're always working to improve your game. That's why I use Lane Talk. Lane Talk lets me focus on competing while it collects all my stats. After each event, I simply go in the app and collect my scores. It's that easy. Lane Talk gives me in-depth information showing me areas I need to work on. Download now in the App Store or Google Play. Join me and take your game to the next level with Lane Talk. When you practice, do you have a routine you like to use, whether a practice session on tour or just at home?
Yeah, well, there's two different ones because tour is about kind of figuring out strategies and that, and hopefully I've put my game together enough by then that on tour it's a little bit backwards. So I'm looking at ball reactions and kind of assessing what's going on in the lane. Once we get an hour and a half in, at that point the lane will turn into whatever the field turns it every week, which is mostly the left gutter. And so at that point I go back the other way and work on my fundamentals and physical game.
Okay.
Spares and that. Normal practice session is the opposite. The first 20 minutes or so, or until I feel good about it, is fundamental. The same. I mean, Fred Borden programmed together for me in the 90s that I used forever. And it's morphed off of it a little bit, but it's essentially a lot of the same things. And if that base is good, then I can do all the other things that the line might ask for.
Okay.
And, and so hopefully it's only, 15, 20 minutes of getting that in. And now it takes me probably 10 of that to get loose. So, so it's a little longer maybe of the base part, but, and then it's just going through, and on a normal day, it's going through all the tools,
Okay.
being able to in one shot move, throw it slower, add rotation, maybe add some loft. And that's a 7-board move, and bang, one shot and repeat it.
Okay.
And that's where I made a lot of those adjustments is where I made up ground on people. And so I spent a lot of time practicing those things and those moves. So I adjusted quicker and got to the right place faster. And you watch Simonson, those guys, he'll go through a million different, he might go through 5 or 6 different things, shoot 150 and just be fearless, because he knows once he gets it, he can beat you with the rest of it.
Yeah.
You just got to get to the right thing. And, you see that a lot with the best players. They're fearless with their moves. They're quick with them. And the guys that are less confident in that move less often, hang on to mediocre ball reaction longer, and then they're in decent shape for a while until the good guys figure out what they want to do, and then they get past. And it's one of the separators out there.
How do you mentally prepare for competition?
These days, just a lot of praying. A lot of what we're doing is physical work. Like today, we're going to go practice, Ryan and I, and everybody in our house was sick, so we didn't get as many games as we would have liked to in an off week. And so you got to work on the fundamental part, but it's really putting the physical part together and then putting the balls together. And it's a little bit different because we both sent 9 balls on the truck, so we don't have our core with us. But we're bowling on 6 different patterns in the next 3 weeks. So that core group of balls, while probably will get the most of the play, probably won't cover everything you're going to see, because anytime you put 6 patterns, you have the extremes on both ends somewhere. And so he's drilled some balls this week. I got to figure out kind of which balls I'm placing around that core group as well. And so today will be a lot about making sure that we have the gaps be covered, so that the one thing I don't ever want is go to a tournament and have the lane man basically beat me because I didn't cover a base. I'd much rather have 3 balls there that I never use than get there and go, oh no, I don't have a ball that hooks, which we don't do that on tour, but I didn't bring anything weak enough or, I don't have anything that gets through the front of the lane for this. And, my job is to fill the gaps in between these, but I got to have, so a lot of what I do teach is 6-ball arsenal that I can fly with anywhere and go, well, I have a option. I may have to throw it this way, but yeah. And that's born from experience and mistakes.
In that 6-ball arsenal, what do you typically have?
If you're oversimplifying it, I'll have 2 balls in the heavy range, 2 balls in medium, and 2 in a dry range. And basically a control and an angular in each of those stages. And like I said, it's more lots of times you're going to a place, I'm going to Qatar. Well, I know this surface hooks a lot in the front. It's pretty beat up, it's pretty dusty. So, I normally you wouldn't bring a reality or a gem or something like that.
Right.
But every time I don't, we go to Japan. We'd already bowled in this place. I made the show the year before, throwing an Eruption Pro. So pretty low end ball. So I bring like a Respect the next year as my highest end ball. I bowl with Dom. Dom is throwing something that's chalky, using the front, overhooking it and laying it off in the back, and he beats me by about 20 pins a game. And the strongest ball I have is the middle of the bag ball. And I have some tools, but you're not beating the best players in the world with pretty marginal ball reaction. And I went to Qatar another time. They're going to run 39 feet. They wouldn't tell us the volume back then, but Kegel's kind of standardized the world. This thing's, I know it's going to be. We show up. Turns out the month before, lane machine was malfunctioned. They put out 13 mils. Qatar had their most successful Middle Eastern games in decades. Guess what we bowled on? 13 mils. So the sixth frame of game one of the first block I bowled for the week, I had a blue dot going down the lane.
Wow.
That was fun. And I still threw 16, which there was none of that in the rest of the world. So, it was very comforting knowing that my high end was cashing.
Yeah.
It's the best I could do that week. And that's where, same as we do ball reviews, so players don't make a $220 mistake buying a ball that's not right for them. You try and make sure that you're covered, so you don't fly halfway around the world and go, "Hey, I'm in for $2,000 and I have zero chance of winning this tournament because the weakest ball I brought was a power swing, which is just not that weak, and it was dumb." And so that's. But so now I have a tropical surge that travels with me, and I use as a spare ball also when I go to some of these things. And you just try and be smarter and cover your bases better.
What is the hardest and the easiest part about bowling for you?
The physical part now is the hardest part. It turns out that this is a perishable skill, and that no matter how hard I work now, that some of those things that I used to do, mentally, it's very difficult for me to come to grips with the 35-year-old version. Is I can have glimpses of it, but there's not very many days where I compete at that level at a really long time, and gosh, I got off track here.
Very good. The easiest and hardest part about bowling.
The hardest part, yeah. I mean, mentally preparing, where I was going into tournaments to win every week, and I still want to win one more time, and I still believe I can win one more time. But that there's dealing with the failures of just not being nearly as competitive regularly. Competing, having a chance to make the show, which was at my best days, it was about 1 out of 3. I was making the shows, and it was a lot of fun. I wish I'd enjoyed it more, because it's kind of always on the grind and always looking for ways to get better. But it didn't make me appreciate kind of what I had at the time. Physically, now I do a ton more of band work and different things to keep me flexible and keep my injuries from getting in the way of performance, and just keep my legs, and still have to keep my legs core strong. I mean, any of my best runs, there was leg and core work going on all the time. You obviously don't have to be super strong. You ever watch Parker? It's not a gun show. And, he was really good, but he had some of the best legs. His physical, his core and lower body were as good as anybody maybe that ever played a game.
You went on tour, or started going on tour when you were 27. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was actually almost 28.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time and give advice to your 27-year-old self, what would that be?
Yeah, enjoy the process a little bit more. Find ways to take the good out of what's going on there. And again, I don't know where that line is. Could you watch some other obsessive compulsive athletes? Whether it's and I don't really mean to compare myself to Jordan, Kobe, and that, but when you read their books, you go, I recognize that.
Yeah.
Some of those things in there of the constant pursuit it was driving, and it certainly made me way, way better. But it also, I won. Well, of course I was supposed to win. That's, and I lost. Well, that sucked. What'd you do wrong? How can we fix that? And then just go back to work again. And, in our game where you can bowl 42 games, and then you get to the end and you lose one game, and then that's a failure. I didn't take many of the positives out of that along the way. And I would have liked to enjoy the ride, caught a little bit of perspective in between the going to work, even if it was just a day of, all right, hey, that was pretty good.
Yeah. Take a moment to celebrate the victories.
Right. And I just didn't until I was later on. I got tired of kicking my own butt all the time. And towards the end of my career, I started to enjoy the whole process and the riding and found a better balance to it. But by then I wasn't making, you know, every other show. And so, uh, my TV record got better. I got better. I figured out some of the things that I did under the most intense of the moments. Mostly just TV. I didn't really have it at that point. I was so comfortable to make the show. Those moments didn't bother me. It was really just an over process and over amplification of TV and micromanaging everything at that point. And uh, once I figured out one of my flaws through there, which Mark Baker helped me with, then I knew how to control my miss, so to speak. And then TV record got pretty good, relatively speaking. But you're making 4 shows a year instead of 7. It doesn't get a chance to show up quite the same way.
Do you think you would have been as successful if you would have enjoyed it more, the process more? Do
I don't
you
know.
think the drive that kept you, you didn't, it didn't sound like you celebrated your wins as much, but you really beat yourself up in your losses. Did that spur you on to make you better? But it is, I guess it's also like a risk of burning out by doing that.
Yeah, I think and I didn't burn out, but I also wasn't any fun to be around.
Mm.
You know, um, and it didn't even. I look back, I didn't even look like I was having much fun, and I like internally, I'm like, because you're still throwing that shot, and the one you throw, and you just go, oh man, I don't have to watch this one. I know that's good.
Yeah, right.
and and now I might throw one a day, and I was throwing a fair amount of them that you were really really pleased with as it was going, and I don't know, and that's that fine line between accountability and you know finding the joy in the whole thing in the game and remembering it's a game, and uh, I watch guys like Camp Crow, and he looks like he's having a good time when he's out there, you know, and sometimes my spidey senses go off because I feel like maybe maybe he doesn't work as hard to address some of the things that he's not as good at. I think it was right for me. I do think I needed to find a better balance of it. Maybe it was just a 5% tick, maybe it's just 2 or 3%,
Yeah.
but it is a game, and that's right. I guess I look at it really hard now because I have a mirror that flashes back at me once in a while, and that he's already got some of it wired way better anyway. Uh, but how hard can you push before that's burnout? And he's found his own limits in there, and he's obviously put in the work because 5 years ago there was a ton of people that were better than he was, and there's a lot less that are now, and that's super. That's all on him. He seeks it out. He puts in the time. He's applied it, and I just want to make sure he enjoys it all along the way here this year while I'm out there with him, and hopefully help find some of that balance and keep away some of my own struggles and not let it drag him down.
What is the greatest advice you were ever given about bowling?
Oh, man, there's a lot because I've been around so many different coaches, from Gordon to Mark Baker to Fred Borden to Jerry Edwards to my wife to. But one of it was, you don't like it, bowl better. It's very simple, but it's easy to get to complaining and about whatever, blah blah blah, and what. Well, beat it. Like the easiest. It started out as the hardest tournament and then became the easiest one once I went. Everybody hates the U.S. Open. They're hard. There's 480 people bowling. You get this giant center. It's a giant pro-am. There's blah, blah, blah. There's lots of things to be negative about.
Sure.
I'm like, well, they're all going to complain about it. They're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is easy. Now I got, normally you had 60 guys you had to beat every week. Now you're down to like 25 or 30 that are in any kind of place to actually win this thing. And so it was, uh,
Why do you
it,
think there's so much complaining and negativity in bowling? I mean, that seems to be like the general default mindset sometimes is just, I mean, I catch myself doing it and I try to
yeah,
stay pretty positive when I'm bowling.
we're the ultimate contrarians. If you tell me, I'm so lucky, I will instantly go to 6 ways where you're not. And it's just, I mean, that became my default after a while. I was just, I'm just lucky, smoke and mirrors, no, 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 you know. And now it's probably closer to true when I actually bowl good. But back then, if you walked around and beat your chest and told people you're great, they would find 7 ways to tell you how you're not.
True.
I mean, that's just it's an amazing mindset that we have, and largely it's born out of we're a third tier sport. There's not as
Mm.
much money as you'd like. There's not as much this. There's you're not as famous or TV or blah, but and so it's kind of a chip on your shoulder that bowling seems to walk around with
Mm.
on a day-to-day basis.
That's an interesting perspective because there is like a redheaded stepchild kind of mindset of about bowling because it never gets the attention that it deserves.
Yeah, there's like a disrespect that's built in, and then we don't have a ton of athletes that went, wow, I had a choice between playing in the NBA or PBA, and or I was going to play D1 basketball, but decided to go bowl at Wichita State instead. That doesn't we don't really get those kind of athletes, and so
Right.
there's a different mindset there too with people that have played in other sports and gone through the inevitable ebbs and flows that go with it, because sports is largely about how you deal with failure, because you don't get to succeed all the time. You said baseball, if you only fail 2/3 of the time, you're in the Hall of Fame. You know, bowling, if you win 6% of the time, you are in the Hall of Fame, cakewalking in. It's a you know it's
How do you keep how do you keep failure from destroying you?
good question.
I asked Shannon to keep the same question. She said she's still learning that process.
Yeah, I think it does evolve, and expectations have a lot to do with where you're at and what your goals are, and so you just look for your advantages now, I guess, and set my expectations in a place that allow me a little more room to breathe,
Mm.
versus and the pursuit of perfection, but the pursuit of excellence is kind of what you're always trying to do. What that level is a little hard for me to deal with sometimes
Yeah.
these days,
Right.
but uh, there's still enough in there that there's you know we can put the pieces together on certain weeks, and that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for another run, you know, and it might take two or three of them to win on a show, because a lot of things have to go right there even when you get there. But I want to get to 20th title. I'd love to win the Masters, and I think ironically that's probably one of my better chances these days, because it is head to head. And once we get rid of the traffic, now we can get into who can make better shots and better decisions. Not the whole field is five left of me.
Right. Just a couple personal questions. How would your friends and family describe you?
uh, wow. Yeah, better question for them than me. Uh, I think easier going than my bowling persona would lead you to believe. I do like to laugh, and it's sarcastic, sense of humor, uh, but driven, and I think probably blunt sometimes to a fault.
Yeah. Are you enjoying this run you're having with your son being on tour together?
I enjoy the part of being around and getting to watch this start. In an age where I largely anticipated they would want to be done
Yeah.
with me and away from me. The fact that we're rooming together and he doesn't seem to hate it completely is, uh, I don't take that for granted. We
Mm.
got enough other friends with kids and at different ages, and you know,
Yeah.
would much rather do something else or be somewhere else. Uh, I'm not taking for granted the fact that I get to have a pretty unique experience that really it doesn't happen very many places in
Yeah.
life.
What are your personal values?
Uh wow, that's uh, I believe that I believe to be if you want to be part of the 1%, you got to be willing to do what the 99 aren't. So, um, I think you have to be goal oriented, driven, and you have to play with some level of integrity in life, and the two are related. You don't get to separate them and be whatever you want to be over here, and then in life, and then in bowling, and then you're this super disciplined, you know. But I think you have to have some discipline. You have to know yourself, and so I do feel like that. There's some trade offs, and there's a better balance than I had, but you know, there's a reason why not all these super talented people are successful, and so try and learn from not only my own mistakes but from other people's, and try and nothing makes me happier than when Frankie called me, and uh, I knew Ryan was going to practice at the Union in the morning, and he would go out to North Rock in the afternoon. And Frankie called me. He goes, "I don't know if I've ever been out there and not seen Ryan out there also." And he practiced with him, and I'm not making him do it. I couldn't make him do it if I wanted to. He's 19, 20 years old, and he'd go, he's putting in the work on his own. He's working with the college guys, which only a couple of them were, but Spencer and Kepplinger and a couple of guys were. And then he'd go out there and Packy and Frankie were bowling in the afternoon. I'm like, that's 101.
That's it
That's how
right there.
you just, and guys that were way more talented than he was as a freshman were watching him bowl as a junior and a senior.
Hmm.
And, uh, it, and I think that's where going all full circle. That's where that confidence comes back in now, is that he knows in those big moments, he can know in his heart that he's put in more time. I mean, I saw a quote from a touring pro and says something about 140 games, and it's not even March yet, and it was a personal best. And I went, 140 games? Like, for that to be a personal best, that'd have to be January 15th. Like, that's not 140 games in 2 months that's like time off. I don't know.
What is
But
what is your definition of success?
it's not just winning and losing. I think it's playing. It's preparing to succeed at a level that gives you a chance to do it every day, and then along those ways making the decisions but basically I feel like if you prepare better than most everyone else, that you will reap the rewards on the backside of it.
What makes you feel most alive?
Being on that stage, that's you know I watched Bob Learn set that record in Erie, and I played high school basketball, and we'd won a state championship, so I got to play at Allen Fieldhouse, and I got to do all this stuff in Kansas, and being in front of thousands of people was an energy that was I didn't think I would ever get to create again. And then I didn't want to play Division II basketball, and so I ended up going to Wichita State. And then I saw Bob, bowl on that stage in Erie, and then ironically, that was my first title, was in that same arena, and being there in an arena with all those people. Maine does probably the best job since then of recreating that energy. That's the best part of all of it, is being on that stage there and having all of that energy fed at you. Would love to have been a NBA, NFL, any of that, and had that. It's an addiction that it's. I don't know how some of those guys put it away.
Yeah. I've always wondered how you wean yourself off that drug when you're uber successful and then your time comes when you're ready to retire.
Yeah, obviously I'm not very good at it. I'm almost 55 here, and I'm still out there trying to play with the kids. I'm still kind of chasing that. And it's the same thing. Linda went through it too, and everybody goes through it. How much of the beating are you willing to put up? You know, can you take to get that one more time? Get that feeling once more, to be there one more time, and get to hold up, be victorious one more time.
Yeah. Who or
The
what?
juice and the squeeze.
Who or what has been your greatest teacher?
I mean, even to this point, probably the lessons my dad, you know, led by example. I was young, and my dad died in a house fire when I was 11. But
Hmm.
and obviously not all those lessons took, because every team he coached of mine, we won the sportsmanship award, even though I was on the team, which is maybe my temper hadn't come to full fruition yet. But they named the complex sportsmanship award, the baseball after him,
Hmm.
and it was. But he showed me all the sports as a kid. He taught me how to play everything. He taught me, uh, a much milder demeanor than I did, but he taught me how to play, and we just did all the things. And I didn't know he was teaching me that, but he taught me how to shoot, and then how to, you know, the ways to prepare to be better, dribbling, and all the little things. So then when I did play it in fourth and fifth and sixth grade, I was already the best. I was the best player. It's a little small local level, so it's not like that big a deal. But he just taught me skills that gave me a leg up on everyone else.
Hmm.
And then my high school basketball coach was the one that got me, because
Okay.
I was just an angry kid. My dad was gone, and
Hmm.
the only thing that made me feel better was winning
Hmm.
at something, and so, which made me a lunatic, the rest of the time. And he just wasn't. He was this 5'6" Greek guy. They named the court after him. He'd been a legend the whole time, but it didn't matter if you were the best player, the worst player, whatever. Everybody was accountable, and discipline, accountability, doing them the right way, preparing. And that really hung on for me through the next several decades of how I prepared. With bowling, you have coaching around, but there's nobody making you go practice, and there's nobody making you in. And so I just applied those lessons, and okay, yeah, it's not fun to work on boxing out, but if you want to be a rebounder,
Yep.
I'm probably not going to jump 32 inches all of a sudden. So I probably better learn how to box out. And so you just start doing all those little things that allow you to do the big things the right way.
Okay.
And, you know, looking at things that I did wrong and going ahead and owning them and eating it, and didn't get to feel great about it, but I got better at them until pretty soon those weren't weaknesses anymore. And then I think that part served me probably. That accountability he taught me then was probably certainly in my adult life, drove me.
What is your most prized possession?
My family, which is not really a possession, but it's the thing I value most. And it's a little bit of a crux, because I was gone and on the road so much trying to, Linda comes from a very similar background I do, of certainly not wealth. We didn't go without. So it's not some cry for, pity or whatever, but we came from very modest backgrounds. And so there's no safety net. There's nobody going to, if this doesn't work out, no worries. Here's 10,000. Like, no, that was half of what my mom made in a year for my whole high school. So, they had to sacrifice a lot. It took a pretty big team for us to make it through. And lucky I married a very strong woman who's very successful in her own right. And so, she had her own professional career, took that same fervor into being a mom. And then as things got successful, balanced. She didn't love tour anyway, so she found a way to be competitive when she wanted to be, and still basically run a house and do all the things that had to happen there. Plus, I mean, at some point it became a business, and we don't really afford managers and agents, so she's handling a lot of things on the backside where we were able to teamwork a lot of things along the way. And fortunately, got a kid that's more well mannered and put together than I was, and so and he's got a twin brother that I mean, talk about opposites attract. So fraternal twin that's left-handed and he's a music education major, and I mean, he teaches us stuff now. So it's not, we can't sing a lick, we can't play an instrument, we're not good at any of it.
Well, final question. What is your favorite bowling memory?
There's a few of them. I mean, from a purely personal only, striking in the 10th to win the U.S. Open. And I'd had a million losses not a million, but I'd been on a bad run on TV going up to that. I'd made 12 shows the year before and didn't win, or I guess that probably wasn't the year, but at some point that was part of the story. And so that became Dave Ryan's only story. Every time I bowled, I got tired of hearing it. But to throw a strike in the 10th on the hardest pattern to win the biggest, at that time I felt like that was the most prestigious tournament. That was a huge liberator for me, and I enjoyed it, but it was really more relief than anything of performing, on the unlikeliest of situations to throw, your best shot in that spot and come out was huge. The 300 on the shark pattern, which is also almost equally unlikely, especially given the ball I ended up throwing it with, which I didn't know anything about because I got it 2 days before. It wasn't even coming out for a month.
Oh, wow.
But shooting 300 and Linda, Ryan, and Troy all being there at the same time, and now there's been 10 more since then. So it's not quite as rare as it seemed like at the time. But, it's one of those things, it's going to put you that's a forever thing. This doesn't happen that much. And they were there and I got to share it with somebody, which you don't get to share a lot on tour with the group. And the other ones are more like Team USA based, like, Tommy striking the win for us to win the gold medal in Germany against Finland, and Osku and Mika, and a team of really talented players over there. That was and in front of what's relatively one of the biggest crowds that we'll ever see.
Yeah.
Especially for an international event, and everybody kind of showed up to watch because it was the best guys on tour, all bowling against each other, 4 medals in country, and so other teams, other countries were there, plus fans, and and it's a pretty cool venue there at Dream Bowl in Germany. It's big and sets up well for something like that. So that was a pretty special moment.
Well, Chris, it has been an absolute honor to have this time with you. Thanks for being here and sharing stories and knowledge and wisdom. I really appreciate it.
Well, I don't know how much of that last part, but I appreciate you asking questions. It was fun, kind of dragging down memory lane to some extent too. Yeah. And I love what you guys do here. I think you're doing great stuff.
Well, thanks so much. It was really great again. I appreciate it.
Thank you.